Hitsugaya versus Mayuri Korotsuchi, alright? I got that fight today for the Bleach community, within my community, within the anime community. What I say about it. Green Angel. We got 3 scenarios today for that. We got Soul Society arc, them fighting during the Soul Society arc, and then during the Arankar arc, and then them fighting during the Thousand Year Blood War. But we ain't gonna use the anime. Why are we not gonna use that? Because that's not an accurate representation of their full power and everything else. Because you know that he was a zombie during that time, right? I'm talking about Hitsugaya, and then Kurotsuchi had all his moves on display. But if I'll get to that in the third scenario. But the first scenario is during Soul Society. So during the Soul Society, they're both Soul Reapers. You know, Captain of Squad 10, Hitsugaya, Captain of Squad 12. Who did Hitsugaya fight? He fought against Gin, and he fought against Aizen, who he thought was Aizen, because of Kyoka Suigetsu. Then Mayuri fought against Uryu. But we're having them fight against each other instead. So strength goes to Hitsugaya. Hitsugaya can stand on business. He's there for the fight. He's there to defend Soul Society, to defend his people and all that shit. Maori's kind of weak in a sense because he likes to play games with research and try to come up with different drugs and other things just for his own amusement. He likes to fuck around in that way. Speed goes to Speed goes to Hitsugaya. He's a little fast guy too. He's the shortest captain and he's like the youngest captain too. He's also quick. Durability goes to Korotsuchi though. You know, Bigger guy and he can handle some things. Attacks thrown at him. Endurance also goes to Korotsuchi because he performed. He has drugs on his side. He can essentially make himself not feel pain and all kind of shit. So uh he can last in a fight. Not so much in the beginning of the series, but he still has other things. And he has been a Soul Reaper like Captain longer than him. So he also has experience, and not just experience over Hitsugaya, but he has intelligence too, because he's the head of the research and development division. Anything having to do with research on hollows or Soul Reapers and how they can become better and better at combating these hollows. Anything new. Shit like holification research. Shit like mod souls. The thing that Cone is. Shit like modifying Soul Reaper's bankais and shit like that. Different drugs he creates. Um, and so the close skills go to Hitsugaya. Hitsugaya will run up on somebody and start swinging his sword around. You know, Mayuri has range skills, but even Hitsugaya has range skills too. Hitsugaya can be away from you and then have you all up in ice. You'll be like, what the fuck? And he'll be covered in ice real quick if he's in his Bankai form. So I give the close skills and the range skills to Hitsugaya, during the beginning. Because Kurotsuchi wasn't quite, on his shit, like I was saying. He didn't have all those drugs he had, like, later on, in the series. But you'll be surprised still, because, I got Recoup goes to Kurotsuchi, because he spammed Recoup after, after, Uryu, took him down, right? He liquefied his body. That's what he did. Liquefied his body so he could escape to get, treatment. he has different moves he does. He's kind of like Orochimaru of Naruto. Has to go to Korotsuchi as well. He has a Bankai as well. He equips his Bankai with different poisons and other things. He had Udio kind of fucked up. He was even fucked up after that, like he was gonna die. But Nemu, had a treatment for him, so he was all right. The environment goes to Hitsugaya though. Hitsugaya is a better person to defend the Soul Society and everything. Korotsuchi is he ain't like that. He likes to play games too much and like fuck around with people's like bodies and see what the fuck can happen with. He likes to play games with his research, kind of unethical. But Mayuri still wins that fight. It's very close though. He wins though. Hitsugaya, like I said, is less experienced in other things than Korotsuchi is. So he'll play that. Now play a factor there. And then he's smarter and has all that shit. And then Hitsugaya is young, right? So he's like, if you say one thing to get him upset, he'll like rush right in and he'll, not think so much about, who his opponent is. But in the second scenario, during the Aranka arc, who did they fight against? Who did each of them fight against? Mayuri fought against Espada number 8. That's Xylopero Grants. You know, he's also kind of like a scientist for the Arankar, a little bit, but more for himself. And he likes to fuck with people, you know, poison people and other things. Just the same way. Um, and it was kind of a battle of the brains. Mad scientists, battling each other when those two fought. But Korotsuchi ended up winning that. Then Hitsugaya fought against the third Espada, Tira Holly Bell. She has large Reatsu levels, more than, Xylopera grounds. And she used water. She was able to turn his ice back to water. He had to, really push himself during that fight to catch that dove. And even then, he still couldn't, like, outright kill her, you know. Because she was still alive and other things, you know. Strength goes to Hitsugaya, though, still. Like, he fought against a harder opponent, and he was, like, staying in it, you know. And he fights harder for, the ideas and the people he cares about. And he does do that better than Kurotsuchi does. Speed goes to Hitsugaya again, too. And durability goes to Kurotsuchi. He basically came out of that fight, I wouldn't say unscathed, but he basically did. You know, he did break his Bankai, or his sword did break, but when he fought against Xyolopero. But if he's fighting against Hitsugaya, he'll be able to take some damage and keep fighting. Um, Hitsugaya, though, can stand in the fight longer than he can. Korotsuchi basically in this second scenario has to be smart and play his cards right with the drugs that he does. The one he used on Xylopero, the one that slows your mind down to like a great degree. So basically, oh my god, it takes like thousands of years for things to like reach you, for it to like actually register that something's happened to you. Like it took him 1,000 years to realize he was already dead. Xylopero after Mayuri hit him with the drug that slows his like reaction down to like a great degree, like not on some like bullshit. Like he's basically frozen in time. He's like, why isn't his sword attacking me? It would be similar. Um, but Hitsugaya, if he's smart enough, and he is not a dumber captain, but even so, it would play out certain ways. Intelligence goes to Korotsuchi, and then Mari also has the experience as well. He has experience still over Hitsugaya, and then close skills go to Hitsugaya, right? He has all those moves he uses too. Senninoro and all these other moves. He likes to move up on people, freeze them to death. You know, and Kurotsuchi or Mayuri, he has answers for shit. You know, if he knows your bag, your moveset, range skills go to Kurotsuchi. You know, he has them drugs he can put on you. You know, now you'll have to ingest the drug somehow. You know, he could equip it to his bankai and have his bankai like emit, gas from his mouth. You know, Ashijiza, Ashishoshi. And once that happens, it goes into your system, and then you're like, basically you're fucked. You know, because only he knows about the antidote. Recoup goes to Kuratsuchi, Mayuri, and also Hacks go there too. His Bankai didn't improve much. You know, it did a little bit. And I'm talking about Hitsugaya. You know, and he even states in the anime, his Bankai and Shikai have like, there's very little difference between the two. You know, it's just more ice power, more control over the weather to summon ice. That's it, essentially. Environment goes to Hitsugaya. Like I said, he can summon down ice, you know, snow, shit like that. Um, and then he also has like he just has you know, he wants to fight for people. So he'll make sure that, he gets the job done in the fight. People like Hitsugaya more than Mayuri. They would help him before they help Mayuri out. Mayuri wants to play games. They'd be like, they would definitely jump on Hitsugaya's side if he had, people, if there were people there. However, it still goes to Mayuri because, like I said, at this point he has those drugs. Those drugs are definitely, powerful. And, Hitsugaya's not quite, he's questioning things, but he's also not, you know, because he's still like reckless. Remember when he ran into the fight when Aizen, um, he got Momo, killed basically. He saw that shit and he was like, "Oh my God, you had me kill Momo. Now I'm gonna kill you." He lost his mind. You know, but this is where things get interesting in the third scenario. You guys might say, other things, but hold on, let me talk about it real quick. Because this is during the 1,000 Year Blood War, and I am going to talk about a little bit of like spoilers, but not really spoilers. Um, you know, strength goes to Hitsugaya. Hitsugaya had his, Bankai taken away from him, right? But then he got a Holified Bankai. It was thanks to, um, goddamn, Kisuke in the Black Puma. He was able to get his Bankai back. Speed goes to Hitsugaya still. Durability goes to Kurotsuchi still. Endurance goes to Hitsugaya. He fought against Basby and he fought against Kongbu too. Intelligence goes to Mayuri, and experience still goes to Mayuri as well. And you saw in the anime already, if you watch 1,000 Year Blood War, he was able to get, Hitsugaya taken care of. But this at this point in the series, Hitsugaya, if he's alive and he's not fucking dead, you know, being a zombie controlled by somebody else, and his actions are his actions, he's not falling for those tricks. He's wiser, older. And not much, but it's still enough to be like, an actual fight, and enough for Hitsugaya to like keep himself at bay and use more long range attacks on um Mayuri. Close skills, that's Hitsugaya too. You know, And and I believe that he said, and Mayuri said it in the anime too. He's like, if you were, yourself right now, I would have a harder time fighting you, than you are right now as a zombie and being controlled by that one bitch. Um, Mayuri's recoup is still better than Hitsugaya. Um, However, the hacks I go to Hitsugaya. We're just gonna say it like this, y'all. He has himself a adult form, so he ages into adult, right? And that's Hitsugaya, and he has his Bankai powers amplified to a great degree. He can freeze shit all kind of ways, much like Rukia, but it's still more powerful than Rukia's Bankai. Environment goes to Itugaya. He has people who will fucking help him out too. If they saw, if basically, if anybody saw Mayuri and Hitsugaya fighting each other, they're gonna hop on his side and not in the cause of Mayuri because they know that you know, he plays games. He likes to, do research, and it's not necessarily research that helps out the Soul Society as a whole. Not always. It's all sometimes it's just for him to see what he was thinking about. Well, this happened if I do this. And he does it to play games. And he gets enjoyment from that. But in doing that, somebody's life's at risk of being fucked with, manipulated in some way. But a Hitu guy who's not being controlled by the zombie, you know, he can fight against that guy. He can fight against Maori and he can beat him. I have him in the last scenario. I have Hitsugaya winning that. Um, but either way, it's close every time between those two. It's not an easy fight. Extreme diff. Um, but you can like have it, go either way with these two. If somebody thinks that Hitsugaya wins every time, I wouldn't disagree. Or I would disagree a little bit, like a little bit of you know, things, but um, like I could. What I'm saying is, I could see that. These are like close fights. But I see, just Mayuri's just smarter guy, and Hitsugaya at the beginning of the series, he's a guy who he tries to keep a cool head. He tries to. People get on his nerves and shit though, still, and he like lashes out. Not in a like, I mean, he does, go off the rails. So because Mayuri can keep a cooler head in the situation, and he knows how to play games, more times than not, Mayuri's gonna win the fight. But stay cool, calling on the corner, like Hitsugaya, and don't play too many games like Mayuri Kuretsuchi now.